With Marvel's new Phase 5 coming up soon, we are all really excited. But with most of the Avengers gone, what or who can we expect now to save us all? And so we decided to make a list of some of the new Avengers that we believe Phase 5 will introduce. And without further ado, let's begin. So let's try and start off with Ant-Girl, or Cassie Lang for a more familiar name. She has already been around as Ant-Man's daughter for quite a while now. But what about her as a hero? For those of you that do not know, Cassie Lang in the comics eventually becomes known as Stature because of some life-altering events, and we will try and leave that as a hint, and then later, Stinger, because of her questionable choices. Spoilers, but she has about the same abilities as Ant-Man. You know, becoming really big, or really small, yes, surprise, surprise. We could say that she's there to carry on the legacy of Ant-Man, and she probably is, as the rest of the Avengers are already retiring or have already started to, with the other younger generation of Avengers already introduced, and ones we can expect to see in Phase 5 like Ironheart and Echo. Here we have another one, and she is making her debut as Ant-Girl. We are curious to see how much of her they will bring from the comics, but for now, we feel like Young Avengers might be in the works somewhere. Come on, you're excited. You have that feeling about that too, don't you? You know, try as they might to keep it a secret, but you and me, we are on to their tricks. Okay, so when we first saw Nicolas Cage with his skull on fire, did we automatically know that he was from Marvel? What? You all knew from the start? Seriously? Well, we think that we can probably see at least a cameo from this Hellraiser at least once in Phase 5. And why? Because of the Thunderbolts. So, Marvel has already announced the Thunderbolt series in Phase 5. And guess who's a member of this Suicide Squad? Oh yeah, Ghost Rider. He is more of an anti-hero than a full-time hero, but we love him. And we are so excited to see who's going to take on his character and if Nicolas Cage will return for the role. He probably would, since Marvel does have a knack for bringing back the originals, which we all really enjoy. But if it is not Nicolas Cage, some people are hoping for Norman Reedus to play the role. And you know, we think that he would be a pretty fitting choice. We've seen Norman Reedus in Death Stranding, Connected to Death, in The Walking Dead, fighting the dead. Now, he's literally becoming the dead? Oh yeah, this is just starting to get more and more exciting. Or deadly, huh? Okay. The name might sound like Spider-Man, and may give some of you the impression that she is basically like Spider-Girl, but older. That's not it at all when it comes to Spider-Woman. Jessica Drew, or Spider-Woman, is not your average spider persona or variation, whatever you want to call it. She may share some of Spider-Man's abilities like superhuman strength, agility, durability, spidey sense, but where Spider-Man shoots webs, she shoots venom, and she has a motorcycle. Spider-Man doesn't have one of those now, does he? She's also immune to poison and has regenerative abilities. And so you already know how awesome she is at this point, but what is her connection to Phase 5? And how do we know that we can expect to see her? Well, she's one of the main ones in Secret Invasion in the comics, and she also plays a part in Secret Wars. There's also the new Spider-Verse movie, which could introduce Spider-Woman as part of the MCU, but that's difficult to say, even though everything is now connected by the multiverse, so anything works. Speaking of the Thunderbolts, we also speculate that we might see Agent Venom soon-ish. Alright, so we don't quite believe Agent Venom will be joining us anytime soon, but there has been some buildup of his character already, especially in the post-credit scene of Spider-Man No Way Home, where we see that the symbiotes are all going a bit crazy over Spider-Man, to the extent that they left a little something, and we assume that they might bring back that dark and edgy Spider-Man from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, but most importantly, they might bring us Agent Venom. For those that don't know, that is how Agent Venom comes to be, from symbiotes. So we can already tell that there's some sort of a setup here, but again, it's difficult to say that it's going to be in Phase 5, but who knows? We might get ourselves a surprise since Agent Venom is part of the Thunderbolts as well. And we have Spider-Verse coming out. So there might be somewhat of an introduction since Tony Revolori, the actor for Flash Thompson in the current Spider-Man universe, has really been pushing for an Agent Venom movie for quite some time now. Although we aren't really sure if he's going to be Agent Venom or someone else is going to be casted, since, unfortunately, he was quite negatively received by audiences as Flash, but I guess we'll have to see where that goes. So the last time that we remember seeing Blade was more than 10 years ago, and honestly, did you know? Did you really know this guy was from Marvel too? Of course you did, but anyways, let me tell you a little something about Blade as a refresher. So he's half human and half vampire, making him a Dhampir who is immune to vampire bites and he hunts vampires. Yeah, he's basically Blade the Vampire Slayer, who has almost all of the abilities of an average vampire, but now improved because he isn't disintegrating from the sun. Regenerative abilities, super speed, superhuman strength, heightened senses, and excellent combat ability. Blade is just one of those really cool characters, and those sunglasses he wears, come on! That's like literally the definition of cool. We really wanted to see this character again, and now finally he's going to be back on screens. Blade will be getting his own movie, already announced by Marvel, to appear in about 2024, which by the way is also when Phase 6 happens, and there were some issues in the making of the movie which sadly caused the delay, but Marvel has assured us that Blade is Phase 5. There are also some interesting spoilers about Blade from the comics in case you didn't remember. He has close ties with Doctor Strange, the X-Men, and guess who? Oh yeah, that's right, Ghost Rider. This spells out a lot for potential plot points that we can speculate, but we cannot get too ahead of ourselves since this movie is still in the works, but still, we are really hoping that we are going to be seeing Ghost Rider alongside Blade. Would that not be epic? Please, Marvel, please? All of us are waiting on the X-Men with bated breath. When will we see their debut? When are we going to see Wolverine and Deadpool on screen together? Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds on screen as part of the MCU? Oh yeah. Let's talk about a few of the characters in this entry, mainly Storm, Beast, and Wolverine. Okay, let's start off with Storm first. We expect that our favorite weather-changing queen might be making her debut soon as well. At least we hope. Because if you remember the way that the hints were dropped by Tom Holland before Spider-Man No Way Home about him meeting Andrew Garfield or bumping into Tobey Maguire, we are aware about how sneaky Marvel can be with giving us subtle messages like that. Nate Moore, the producer of Black Panther 2, mentions, and I quote, "Well, Storm's relationship with Wakanda is pretty interesting," end quote, and yes, we agree. It is pretty interesting. But there isn't any Black Panther movie or series in Phase 5. While that may be true, we just can't rule out that she might just be making her debut, and very secretly, but we are watching. And there's surely going to be someone in the upcoming Ant-Man movie, huh? Like Storm, perhaps? Maybe? Secret Invasion has a lot of heroes. Okay, so about Beast. He is another character we believe might make his debut soon, and we love it. Do you all remember this gentle yet fierce guy? He's such a lovable character, and we are ready to welcome him. So how do we know that he might be making his debut as well? Compared to Storm, Beast might be a much sooner appearance, and we can take the clues from Secret Invasion. So from the trailer, Abigail Brand has already been confirmed. But who is a close associate of Beast? Oh yeah, that's right, Abigail Brand. But if that doesn't assure you, in the comics, and this is spoilery, during the Secret Invasion, a few Skrulls have been brainwashed and believe themselves to be heroes. And one of them being, oh yeah, you guessed it, Beast. And Beast also played an active part in stopping the Skrull invasion. Now, we aren't sure how much of the plot from the comics we can expect to see in the series, but Beast is very intricately embedded within the MCU, so it makes sense for Beast to make his debut in the Secret Invasion series, and we really hope he does. How can you not just completely adore this guy? Look at him! He's so fluffy! So, about Wolverine. The last time Hugh Jackman made his appearance as Wolverine was way back in Logan, and he has since completely retired from the role. But through the efforts of many people, we can finally expect to see him again in Deadpool 3. And yeah, we are super hyped for it. But Deadpool 3 is set for Phase 6. So what about Phase 5? From what we have gathered so far, Marvel still feels like there is quite some time for there to be a full X-Men thing. And with Phase 5 and 6 revealed, we didn't see any X-Men there either. We can only hope for cameos and debuts right now, so for Wolverine, we think that maybe there is a chance for him to appear in Phase 5. Maybe alongside Beast, or maybe in a post-credit scene? We already mentioned Secret Invasion a bunch in this video, but Wolverine plays a role in that series in the comics, so something of that sort, like an introduction and confirmation of him in the MCU? Since Deadpool 3 will be out sometime in Phase 6, it is definitely possible that they sneak in Wolverine somewhere. All of us fans are just really waiting for anything X-Men. A surprise appearance somewhere in the background or something. Just anything. You know, now I just want answers. Just give us Wolverine! We've already seen this character introduced in the trailer of Marvel's upcoming series, Secret Invasion. For this one, we will talk about Abigail Brand. And on the surface, she seems similar to the Black Widow or Maria Hill, since, you know, she has similar combat abilities, but let us comic fans let you in on a little bit of a spoiler. She's literally a mutant with pyrokinetic abilities, so pair her combat abilities with superpowers and oh yeah, you've got yourself a seriously awesome character. Abigail Brand's debut is perfect for this new series in more than just one way. First off, she actually is a part of the Secret Invasion universe, and then she has a lot of secrets of her own. For comic fans, you already know what we're hinting at here, but for those who don't know, this character might be more interesting and important than you think. Unless, well, Marvel has other plans. And we believe that she'll take on an important role as an Avenger and as part of the X-Men, I mean the MCU. Maybe we are being set up for X-Men. And we are really hoping, since we've seen Professor X recently, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Again, we'll just keep waiting here. Just need some info, but we'll keep on waiting. Okay. We've already seen in the recent Doctor Strange movie that Mr. Fantastic has been introduced, but what about the other three that, you know, made up the Fantastic Four? We do believe they might also be introduced in Phase 5. Let's have a look here. Let's start off with Invisible Woman, or Susan Storm. Now, again, we would like to reference Secret Invasion for this one, or actually all of the Fantastic Four, because all four of them play a part in the comic at the very least. And since we've already gotten the introduction of Mr. Fantastic, or what's left of him, we do have a feeling that Marvel thinks it's time to add the Fantastic Four into the universe, or again, we hope. Now, a little about who exactly is Invisible Woman. We haven't seen much of her since the last Fantastic Four movie, but we do recall her being able to go invisible. I guess that was obvious, but aside from that, she can break force fields, make people temporarily blind, and what else here? Oh yeah, she can explode them. And you know, just reflecting on this, is she really a hero? 'Cause is that not a bit extreme? She sounds kind of terrifying now. But these are just a few of her abilities that we can gather from the comics and from what we know from her from the movies. It is possible that Marvel has other plans because usually characters get edited, but we hope that she appears soon alongside Mr. Fantastic. We really just want to see all four together, please. So about the Human Torch. Since Marvel is connecting multiple universes and all the other movie versions, what about Johnny? 'Cause, you know, he kind of became Captain America. Yeah, that's a bit of a head scratcher, but the Human Torch is also someone we expect to see. I mean, we expect to see all of the Fantastic Four, but we do wonder who will show up as the new Human Torch. It's not gonna be Chris Evans again, right? That would be a really interesting and confusing plot twist. In most depictions, the Human Torch is the annoying little brother who pulls pranks on people. He's a bit of a trickster and just someone that you could either love or hate, but despite that, he is also there when you really need him, and he cares for those he loves. He is a bit of a hothead, pun intended, and his abilities match his fiery personality as he turns himself into a flaming hero who can even use the power of flight. There are many different versions of the Human Torch, as there are with any of the other heroes on this list, but we do hope Marvel brings us something to enjoy with this character in the mix. Else, you know, it could turn into a bit of a hot mess, huh? Ha ha ha! Okay. Much like the other two, the Thing might also show up in Phase 5. The Thing in the comics was actually a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was after the Fantastic Four had disbanded. Oh, I should have said spoilers for that one, but anyway. So then the Guardians got called for some war, and then they got stranded on Earth, and then they disbanded. And the Thing's part in the team didn't last for very long. But we haven't really seen the Thing being with the Guardians yet, which can only mean that the upcoming Volume 3 of the Guardians movie could be the perfect time for the Thing to make his appearance. This speculation may hold some weight even more so because it kind of aligns with the comics of how the Guardians disbanded after taking him in, and with Volume 3 being reportedly the last movie in the Guardians franchise, maybe Thing gets to be the new addition in the array of characters that Marvel has been introducing to us lately. Plus, like we said earlier, with Reed Richards already introduced, we are pretty sure all of the Fantastic Four are going to be showing up sometime soon, possibly as soon as Phase 5. Although we recently saw Mr. Fantastic being turned into ribbons and Black Bolt also, taking a hit, we're not really sure if Marvel would kill these two characters so easily. We think, at least, Mr. Fantastic would be making an appearance again soon. Maybe through some multiverse magic, but again, we will just have to wait and see what becomes of the Fantastic Four in whatever plans Marvel has for them. What are your thoughts and opinions for Marvel's Phase 5? Which characters are you looking forward to? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.
Phase 5 is fast approaching, and with it, most likely new heroes. Yeah, moviegoers nowadays may think there's a lot of heroes in the MCU right now, but oh boy! The comics are practically crawling with them. And as actors age or move on but the MCU prevails, a changing of the guard is inevitable. So it's a good thing there's tons of interesting hero candidates that still haven't been confirmed or just haven't had their costumed empowered crime-fighting debut in the movies yet. So why don't we go through a bunch of fun and interesting characters that would be great to finally see in the MCU. Let's start off with Marvel's absolute worst kept secret, the Young Avengers. Discounting Kate Bishop, almost the entire team has already been quietly introduced to the MCU, but haven't started fighting crime yet. Just to count them all off, WandaVision introduced Billy and Tommy, who become known as Wiccan and Speed in the comics. Right now they kinda don't exist, but with the multiverse and magic being a thing, that's hardly a problem. Then there's Patriot, Eli Bradley, who made a brief appearance in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Cassie Sandsmark has been hanging out in the MCU ever since Ant-Man came out, just waiting to become Stature. Oh, and we've also got Miss America running around now, in case we want to include some later members. And finally there's Iron Lad, whose existence we can confirm simply by virtue of Kang and the Screwy timelines having already been established. So now we just need Hulkling, who we haven't really seen any hint of yet. But at this point it seems to be just a matter of time. We may need some multiversal, timey-wimey, magical finagling to make it happen, but hey, this is Marvel. That kind of stuff is just a normal Tuesday for them. Superhero fans are eagerly waiting for the return of everybody's favorite Merc with a mouth. And why wouldn't they? After the character's first disastrous movie appearance back in X-Men Origins Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds fought tooth and nail to give us a faithful adaptation of Deadpool. And he succeeded with flying colors, entering the scene guns a-blazing a few years later, spitting quips like nobody's business. But despite this, Deadpool has been awfully quiet since the Disney-Fox merger, likely due to the X-Men and mutants not really having been fully introduced to the MCU. Yet. With Charles Xavier showing up in Multiverse of Madness, Kamala Khan being confirmed mutant rather than inhuman, certain Easter eggs in She-Hulk, and the X-Men 97 animated series on the way, the MCU gene pool is about to get majorly shaken up. How exactly this is going to happen is still anyone's guess, but it seems pretty likely that Wade will have a lot to say when it does. I've said it before and I'll say it again. As much as we all love Tom Holland, he's gonna have to hang up the tights sooner or later. And when that happens, it'll be high time for a new Spider-Man to start swinging through New York. With the explosive popularity Miles has enjoyed in the last few years, thanks to the Insomniac video games, the Marvel Spider-Man TV show, and Into the Spider-Verse, Miles is pretty much the first choice for becoming the new go-to wall crawler. And why not? He's certainly different enough from Peter to make things interesting, and he has his own spin on spider powers, what with his camouflage and electric shock abilities. We already know for a fact that he, and his uncle Aaron Davis, the Prowler, exist in the MCU thanks to that one scene in Spider-Man Homecoming. So now we just need a genetically enhanced spider with the munchies to head out for a little snack, and we'll have ourselves a brand new Spider-Man. Lately, the MCU has been slightly more experimental with the tone of their properties. Multiverse of Madness leaned into horror imagery, Moon Knight had its darker moments, Blade is confirmed to be coming eventually, and the Werewolf by Night special drops very soon. So why not bring Ghost Rider back too? Now, I know it's hard to forget Nicolas Cage's wild performance as Johnny Blaze, but you gotta remember that first movie came out nearly 15 years ago. It's about time for a new Rider. While it still remains somewhat unclear whether or not the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually canon to the larger MCU, the fourth Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes, did show up there, and he is one of the main characters in the upcoming Midnight Suns game. So with that in mind, Robbie seems to be a perfect addition to the MCU roster of heroes. Someone just needs to decide whether he needs to be reintroduced or if he can pick up right where he left off from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Either way, the Spirit of Vengeance definitely deserves to get back on the big screen. Deep space adventures in the MCU have been largely confined to either the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, Captain Marvel, or the occasional Infinity War. But that doesn't mean there isn't still a huge universe out there that needs exploring and protecting. So, it seems about time to finally introduce Nova. The Nova Corps, a space militia primarily led by the Sandarians, has already been established in the MCU back in Guardians of the Galaxy, so someone could definitely get a hold of their sweet gear. But the question is, who will? The first choice would be Richard Rider, who debuted back in the 1970s and ended up being one of the founding members of the New Warriors, another team that the MCU could bring into the fold if they feel the need to keep introducing more new heroes. He's also been at the center of a few cosmic events such as Annihilation, so having him around for eventual adaptations of such stories might not be the worst idea. However, the second Nova, Sam Alexander, is probably the one more people recognize nowadays, especially with having served as one of the lead characters in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series. He also tends to end up hanging out with many of Marvel's other current young superheroes like Ms. Marvel and Miles Morales, possibly planting the first few seeds for eventually giving us the Champions. One of Marvel's most powerful characters that would be extremely interesting to introduce to the big screen is no doubt the Sentry, the hero with the power of 1 million exploding suns, who nobody remembers exists. While he was introduced in the comics in the year 2000 as a sort of Marvel equivalent to Superman, Sentry's origin story goes all the way back to the golden age of comic books. Here, scientist Robert Reynolds drank a serum that later turned out to be a refined version of Captain America's Super Soldier Serum, which put his molecules 1 second ahead of everyone else and made him absurdly powerful. From here, he then battled alongside all of Marvel's greatest superheroes, right until the moment he willingly let everyone forget he existed in order to defeat the Void, who was actually his own repressed dark persona. And with that heroic act, everyone, including Robert himself, forgot about the Sentry, until he eventually resurfaced. A hero who willingly lets the entire world forget who he is in order to save all of reality. That sure sounds like something a certain other hero can relate to. Aside from just how cool it could be to explore the Sentry as a Superman-like character who suffers from a number of mental illnesses, watching these two swap notes on their similar experiences could make for a very interesting story that would be truly unique to the MCU. Now that the multiverse is just a fact of life in the MCU, it just might be time to bring in Captain Britain. At first glance, he may just be a British Captain America, but that's not really the case. The original Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, doesn't really act out of patriotism and has no connection to the military, but had his powers bestowed upon him by none other than Merlin himself. Or, well, Merlin with a Y, just to keep things fresh. But what's really interesting about Brian is his role as a member of the Captain Britain Corps. A whole slew of Captain Britons from alternate realities led by Merlin, the Corps works tirelessly to protect the multiverse from any threat it may face. Introducing a group like this now that we have a multiverse to worry about could be a lot of fun. But Brian also happens to be a core member of a few British super teams in Marvel, such as Excalibur and the MI13. So if the MCU continues to grow more global in terms of where its superheroics take place, like it has been doing with Black Panther, Ms. Marvel and Moon Knight, Brian and his crew are definitely worth considering. Speaking of Excalibur, here's someone we know is already hiding somewhere in the MCU. The Black Knight. Actually, the third character to take up the name of Black Knight, Dane Whitman was the nephew of an old enemy of Iron Man and Ant-Man, from whom he inherited the whole castle as well as all of his Black Knight gear, including the mystical and sinister Ebony Blade, which originally belonged to the first Black Knight, Sir Percival. Deciding to become a hero instead, Dane infiltrated the Masters of Evil from within in order to help out the Avengers, eventually earning their trust and becoming a full-fledged Avenger after helping them defeat Kang the Conqueror. Yep, there he is again. That dude is everywhere. So with the Kang connection and already having the Ebony Blade, the stage is pretty much set for the Black Knight to appear in the MCU. But the question is, in which role? Since we know he's been speaking to Blade, some are hoping he will appear in an eventual Midnight Suns film, although he doesn't really have a history with them in the comics. He does, however, have history with the previously mentioned Excalibur, MI-13, and even the lesser-known Euroforce, leaving even more ways for the MCU to go more global. But whatever you do, Marvel, just don't make us wait 14 years to make this tease relevant. Again. Now, I don't know about you, but I was super happy to see Hercules show up at the end of Thor: Love and Thunder. The Olympian oath has been a mainstay of Marvel for ages, and while he is usually a hero, he has battled Thor on many occasions. And what with the whole beating the crap out of his dad thing, that's probably what's going to happen next. However, he's not the only Olympian to ever join some branch of the Avengers. The god of war Ares has done that too. Originally portrayed as a villain way back in the 60s who has battled both Thor and Hercules multiple times, the violent and incredibly strong Ares has, in modern day, been more of an anti-hero. Just one with a tendency to join the wrong teams with overall good intentions, and getting way too violent for most clean-cut superheroes to approve of. With a Hercules vs. Thor battle seeming almost inevitable at this point, would it be awesome to see the two butting heads eventually reconciling, and instead having to join forces against Ares? Remember how I mentioned that the MCU is experimenting with tone lately? Well, that doesn't just go for the slightly darker aspects of the Marvel Universe, it goes for comedy too. Now sure, the franchise has definitely always been lighthearted, but with She-Hulk going almost full superhero sitcom, and not in a subversive way like WandaVision did, the gates have been opened for adding even more goofiness to the MCU. And if they want to go down that path, they might as well introduce the Great Lakes Avengers. A deliberately ridiculous and often ineffective super team, the Great Lakes Avengers consists of some of the strangest heroes Marvel has to offer. She-Hulk has already introduced the unkillable Mr. Immortal, but there's also the lame version of Reed Richards known as Flatman, Doorman who can, function as a door, the mass-shifting Big Bertha, and finally, the high-flying dinosaur. They even had Deadpool for a member that one time, and boy could Wade have some fun ripping into these ding-dongs. Now, to be real, we likely won't see the rest of the team, but personally, I would love to see the MCU embrace some of the fringe sides of the comics and just go hog wild with a pure, wacky, cartoony superhero comedy. And for that, there are no greater candidates than the good old GLA. Maybe they'll actually get Living Lightning to join them for real this time. For a long time, the Scarlet Witch and Vision were two of the MCU's most underutilized characters, right until WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness came along to try and fix that. But there is a third character who is very closely connected to both of them, namely Simon Williams, Wonder Man. Simon used to be a down-on-his-luck weapons manufacturer who blamed Tony Stark for his financial troubles, as rich dudes in Marvel tend to do, and ended up willingly letting Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil give him superpowers so he could fight the Avengers, only to eventually regret this choice and become a hero for real. Now, there are many reasons why I would bring him up. Vision in the comics was originally created with a personality based on the then presumed dead Simon's brain patterns, and Simon later entered a romantic relationship with Wanda after her marriage with Vision ended. And given that the MCU doesn't seem to be quite done with Wanda just yet, there is definitely room to include him, possibly as a new love and part of an eventual redemption for her. Granted, with Tony having been dead for a while and MCU Zemo absolutely despising superhumans, Wonder Man would have to have his origin story pretty heavily revised. But hey, they're clearly working on it. We almost had Simon introduced back in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as played by Nathan Fillion, and a live-action series is currently in development. But for now, we can only wonder when Wanda and Wonder Man will wander into each other's lives. In a post-Spider-Verse world, I don't have to tell you that Marvel is crawling with spiders. But not all of them are clones or come from alternate universes. Some of them are very much their own thing within the core Marvel universe, such as Jessica Drew, the Spider-Woman. Jessica has had a number of confusing and conflicting origin stories, from being the result of experiments carried out by the High Evolutionary, to being a Hydra agent who defected from the organization, and further still to having been mutated in the womb. But nonetheless, she has remained an important and unique Spider-Person ever since her introduction in the 70s. Sure, she can climb walls and has all the spider strength that Peter has, but she mixes things up with Miles Morales-esque venom blasts and pheromone powers that can repulse or attract others as she pleases. Not that she seems super fond of using it for understandable reasons. If Marvel ever wants to let Hydra return to prominence, leaning into Jessica's connection to them could certainly prove interesting. She does have a notable enemy in Viper, who both of them actually believe was Jessica's mother at one point. Plus, one of her other most prominent enemies happens to be the sorceress Morgan Le Fay, who definitely packs enough power to pose a major threat in the MCU's future. Now, we've talked a lot about the multiverse so far, and the opportunities it presents for bringing variants of already existing characters into the MCU. But what about characters like America Chavez, who are unique to the worlds they come from? Why not introduce more of those? Why not consider introducing the Squadron Supreme? Debuting in the late 1960s, the Squadron Supreme were basically a super team from an alternate reality that were meant to evoke the Justice League, with Hyperion as their Superman, Nighthawk as Batman, Power Princess as Wonder Woman, Dr. Spectrum as the Green Lantern, and the Wizard, don't laugh, that's actually his name, as the Flash. Despite being the de facto super team of their world, they have been manipulated into fighting the Avengers on several occasions by various villains, so they should be easy to introduce. The Squadron has also been used to explore some of the darker potentialities of the superhero genre, even before Watchmen later did the same, so that's another option. Or, if we want to go meta and give Deadpool more stuff to talk about, they could even represent Warner's past grittier attempts at superhero flicks. Really, with the Squadron, the possibilities seem endless. Here's one that's been rumored for a while. Wendell Vaughn, better known as the cosmic hero Quasar. After getting kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D., Wendell found himself using the mysterious quantum bands, powerful bracelets created by a being known as Eon, in order to defend himself and his father from AIM. After this, he became Quasar, the protector of the universe. The quantum bands grant Wendell various energy manipulation powers, not the least of which is his ability to create solid energy constructs. That might sound a little familiar to viewers of Ms. Marvel, what with the MCU altering her abilities quite a bit, but Quasar's abilities stretch further than that, if you'll excuse the pun, which should keep him from feeling redundant. And hey, we can't let Nova hog all the space hero glory now, can we? A bit of healthy competition never hurt anybody. And hey, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't throw in a complete wildcard. Tigra, known in her civilian identity as Greer Nelson, might not be one of the most well-known Avengers outside of comics, but she actually used to be a pretty notable character. After starting her career as a costume crime fighter known as the Cat, she was magically transformed into Tigra when she came into contact with a hidden race of humanoid cat people. Wielding the Cat's Head amulet, which allows her to switch back and forth between her tiger and human forms, she later joined the Avengers, where she struggled with her place on the team, being aware that her cat-like abilities weren't quite as impressive as many other members. Which could certainly be an interesting angle to explore. I mean, what do you do when everyone else on the team seems to be way more powerful or skilled than you? Exactly where one would go about introducing Tigra is a big question though. She was most recently seen keeping tabs on Moon Knight in the comics, so she's not without entry points, but she would have to fit well thematically wherever she appears. She does have some history with Werewolf by Night though, so maybe? So yeah, who knows when or if Marvel will let the cat out of the bag, but here's hoping they do eventually.
The Avengers roster is only going to get bigger now that the multiverse and the cosmos are all fair game, and that's great news for us fans. But just which new heroes that we've met so far would make the best fit on the Avengers squad rather than flying solo? And which heroes haven't we met could make a huge entrance in Phase 4 and earn their place on Earth's mightiest heroes? Well, that's what I want to discuss today. Let's get started right now. I'm going to start off with some heroes who we already met in Phase 4 but haven't officially joined the Avengers team yet, but are on their way to becoming full-fledged members. So with that in mind, of course I gotta start with Shang-Chi. With a wonderful origin story that ended with the martial artist becoming the proud owner of a set of powerful rings with unknown origin, I think it's safe to say that Shang-Chi will have a huge role in whatever future version of the Avengers we see next. You know, I guess technically Katie got an invitation too, even though she just learned how to use a bow like a week earlier. Hey, maybe they're just in desperate need of a new archer. Could Loki end his final arc in the MCU as a full-fledged Avenger? That would certainly be a fun piece of symmetry. He started the franchise as the one who forced the Avengers to assemble in the first place, and then was utterly destroyed by them. But now that he's on this I'm a good guy in a tie now kick trying to save the multiverse, I think it's only a matter of time before he joins up officially with the Avengers to protect the entire universe. Could you imagine the snarky Asgardian's feelings after realizing he has to become an official Avengers member? He'd probably hate it, but I think the delight we'd feel as an audience is enough to overpower that. Right now, Yelena is working for Valentina Allegra de Fontaine and is seemingly on a quest to eliminate Hawkeye as revenge for what happened to Natasha. But we all know that things won't stay this way. After the two get this misunderstanding sorted, will Yelena just go back to being a hired gun? Or will she actually follow in her sister's footsteps to become the Black Widow of the Avengers team? I hope for the latter one because given her attitude and general demeanor, I'd love to see how she interacts with a big group. Hey, every Avengers team needs a good spy who knows how to be stealthy, right? The Fantastic Four is Marvel's most important family, and some of the biggest comic storylines involving world-ending threats usually involve the Fantastic Four in some way. We know they're on their way as Spider-Man director John Watts has been tapped to direct the MCU's version of Fantastic Four, but the big question isn't who is going to play these characters, but rather how these characters are going to fit into the established MCU. They presumably have to come from a different universe at this point, and if that's the case, then will they want Avengers membership right away? Or do you think they'll want to operate on their own for a bit before a big team up? I mean, they have their hands full already that they don't exactly need the Avengers. Everyone was surprised when, in what feels like 9 years ago at this point, Kevin Feige announced Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali was playing Blade in the MCU. Now, we don't exactly know what Blade's deal will be in the MCU, but it looks like he's going to have ties with another character who I'll mention next. Blade only joined the Avengers in the comics relatively recently when vampires started to become a problem in the world. Are we going to see something similar happen? Are vampires going to start overrunning everything, forcing the Avengers to turn to the one man who probably knows more about the creatures than anyone? Yeah, maybe Blade can join right after a fight with the Sonyverse's Morbius. Amidst all the Eternals drama, another supporting character got a bit of an origin story. Kit Harington's Dane Whitman popped up for just long enough for audiences to get a general gist of where he was heading. His family history is complicated, his uncle's a mysterious dude, and now he has in his possession a sinister artifact. Comic fans know this as the Ebony Blade, and it grants Dane the ability to become the Black Knight. With Blade's voice popping up at the end of Eternals, you know bigger things are planned for Dane, and having him eventually join the Avengers would be a cool way to add some medieval flair to the group. Or will he and Blade team up to form their own team? Only time will tell. One of the most hotly anticipated characters coming down the pipeline is Moon Knight, played by Oscar Isaac. Moon Knight is definitely one of the most quirky Avengers in the MCU, and I'm sure whatever adventure he ends up going on will be full of mayhem and mischief. But the big question is, will he eventually join the Avengers? Honestly, he's a tough sell. Not because he lacks talent, but because he's such an offbeat hero that I don't know how he would vibe with Earth's mightiest heroes. Maybe it'll be a package deal. Maybe Moon Knight, Blade, and the Black Knight could all team up and then join the Avengers, sort of in the same way the Guardians of the Galaxy did in Infinity War and Endgame. The mutants are coming. With the inevitability of the X-Men arriving in the MCU, presumably from a different universe, there's probably going to be an initial clash between the Avengers and Professor X's team. But after everyone walks away as friends, could we see everyone's favorite Canadian cigar-chomping, adamantium-infused mutant join the Avengers? I think Wolverine would be the perfect character to both be a part of the X-Men as well as an official member of the Avengers team. It allows him to be a liaison between the two sides to make sure there are no misunderstandings or miscommunications. Plus, seeing him on the same side as the Hulk in some capacity would just be a delight for fans everywhere. The post-credit scene for Eternals introduced a surprising new character, Thanos' brother, Star Fox. Now, in the comics, Star Fox is problematic in a lot of ways, and although he's lived a lifestyle where he likes to just relax, party, and seduce women, he has joined the Avengers from time to fulfill that heroic itch. Is this where the character's introduction in Eternals leads? Like, how ironic would it be if after the Avengers had to assemble to stop the biggest threat the universe had ever seen in Thanos, a little while later, Thanos' brother Eros, aka Star Fox, joins the Avengers to help fight evil. Sure, it probably would have been better to have him for the Infinity War or Endgame battle, but he was probably busy partying it up on some alien planet or something. The superhero Nova hasn't been exactly teased yet, but it's surprising we've gotten no mention of him. The first Guardians of the Galaxy introduced the Nova Corps, but then the Corps were destroyed off-screen in Infinity War. That actually does lead the way for Nova to show up in full force. Say there were a few survivors of the Nova Corps, and in order to make sure they're never attacked like this again, they infuse one of the remaining members with the Nova Force in order to be their champion. This is a way to get Nova into the MCU, and maybe after teaming up with Captain Marvel or something, he could join the inevitable Space Avengers. Sentry is one of the strongest heroes in the Marvel Universe. I mean, he's been described as having the strength of 1,000,000 exploding suns. Of course he's powerful. He also has one of the most unique comic histories out of any hero, as he lives with the fact that as long as he's around, his evil alter ego known as the Void will also continue to grow more powerful. Now that the Hulk seems permanently hurt and Thor and Captain Marvel are off on their own space adventures, the Avengers will need a heavy hitter on their team who likes to stay on Earth. Sentry is perfect for that. that, and he could be one of the most valuable assets for the Avengers. I mentioned the Hulk being sidelined, so how about a new Hulk steps up? We know She-Hulk is getting her own Disney Plus show, and it will focus more on the lawyerly side of things rather than a straight-up superhero fight show. But will that segue into Jennifer Walters joining the Avengers? Like, yes, she's super strong, and you don't want to mess with her, but also, I think it's about time the Avengers had a good lawyer on their side. The heroes tend to get into a lot of messy situations from a legal standpoint, so it might help to have a practicing lawyer on their payroll. Ghost Rider is a fantastic character who deserves more time to shine in the MCU. Yes, the Robbie Reyes version had a memorable arc on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, but that seems to have been written out of the official MCU canon. Ghost Rider's powers and skills would make him a unique asset on the Avengers team, and the superheroes would have to decide if they could let someone as uncontrollable and frankly a little scary looking as Ghost Rider into their Avengers club. Come on, tell me you wouldn't want to see Ant-Man sitting next to Ghost Rider at the Avengers monthly meetup. That's comedy gold, I tell you. If Deadpool ever makes it over to the MCU, you just know the first thing he'd do is try to become a full-fledged Avenger. He would know that being an Avenger is where the real money is and work hard to be noticed by people like the new Captain America in order to get a spot on the team. The problem with Deadpool on the Avengers is that he might be a little too zany and off the wall for people to take him seriously. Like, he'd be talking to Bruce Banner and then Bruce would have to watch him turn to no one and start talking to a pretend audience. We've already seen the X-Men avoid Deadpool, so why wouldn't the Avengers do the same? I can imagine a scenario where Deadpool slowly sneaks around and tries to appear in the background of Avengers missions in order to boost his credibility. It's heavily hinted that Namor will be the main villain of the upcoming Black Panther 2, which is interesting because Namor is a character who's been both a good and bad guy in the past. If he is indeed the villain of Black Panther 2, will he have a shot of redemption later on? Like, will he eventually get to a place where he is a valuable member of the new Avengers lineup? I could see a situation where he's mad at Black Panther, Wakanda, and the whole world, but decides the best way to implement the changes he wants is by actively contributing to world events and fighting alongside the Avengers in order to get things done. Plus, the Avengers need a water guy. WandaVision ended with Monica Rambeau getting unique powers and becoming a superhero in her own way. In the comics, she's had a bunch of monikers like Spectrum, Photon, and even was Captain Marvel for a while. What if the OG Captain Marvel continues to be too busy dealing with cosmic threats to spend a lot of time on Earth, and therefore Spectrum sorta takes her place on the Earthbound Avengers team in order to keep the planet safe? That would be a cool way to connect the Earth Avengers with the ever-growing Space Avengers, as the bonds between Spectrum and Captain Marvel can continue to be explored. Look, who knows what's happening with Peter Parker's Spider-Man right now? We know Sony and Disney have a complicated relationship, and the future of the webhead is still up in the air. What if the MCU needs to write Peter Parker out, but still wants to use a Spider character in live action? Well, that's where Miles Morales comes in. We already know Miles exists in the MCU, and if No Way Home ends with Peter out of this universe and exploring the multiverse, the Avengers can just call on another Spider-Man in order to fill that void. It allows for Sony and Disney to be happy, as well as keep a version of Spider-Man around in the MCU. Everyone wins. Another hero who's about to make a big impact on the MCU is Ms. Marvel. We already know that she's not only going to get her own Disney Plus TV show, but she's also set to co-star in the Captain Marvel sequel, which is now titled The Marvels. Her powers are unique enough where she's going to make an amazing hero, but the question is if she's just a little too young to join the Avengers properly. Like, Tony Stark isn't around anymore to randomly decide that teenagers should be Avengers anymore, so does Ms. Marvel have a chance? I think it's possible given her skills, but also she could very likely be a member of the Young Avengers, which would be a subset of the Avengers and still counts for this list. While Venom is on his own multiverse adventure of some sort, there's still a way to get the Venom symbiote onto the MCU's Avengers team, and that's through Agent Venom. Agent Venom is Flash Thompson in the comics, who becomes a top soldier for the government after absorbing the Venom symbiote. I think it would just be fascinating to see the MCU's version of Flash Thompson become Agent Venom. From everything we've seen so far, this Flash isn't as tough as previous versions, but he also has a deeply traumatic backstory that deserves to be explored more. Merging him with some version of the Venom symbiote would force him to step up and be a true hero, especially if he wanted to be part of the Avengers one day. Fans are clamoring for Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock to return to the MCU after giving an amazing Daredevil performance in the Netflix era of shows that we don't talk about anymore. And the Devil of Hell's Kitchen would be the perfect street-level perspective that the Avengers probably need right now. A lot of Avengers are these larger-than-life superheroes dealing with huge universe-ending problems, but adding someone like Daredevil to the team would give them a different viewpoint of the world. Like in Spider-Man Homecoming, Adrian Toomes had been getting away with street-level crime for a while because the Avengers were too busy dealing with huge threats. So I think that's why a Daredevil addition, as well as any of the Defenders really, would be valuable. Because the multiverse is truly exploding, I think it's time to bring in Captain Britain. Not only is he a fun, awesome superhero in his own right, but he's usually part of the Captain Britain Corps, which is an interdimensional organization that basically ensures there's a Captain Britain in every universe. It would be a good anchor point to all the crazy multiverse shenanigans we're about to witness if we had a Captain Britain on the Avengers. The Hawkeye TV show is set to introduce Echo, a brilliant fighter who possesses photographic reflexes that allow her to copy fighting techniques she sees. It's rumored that Echo kicks so much butt in the Hawkeye show that she's going to get her own spin-off series. And why stop there? If she's that popular, she could see herself on the path to full-fledged Avengers membership. And while her fighting style would normally put her on the weaker end of the Avengers power level, let's not forget that Echo also becomes a host for the Phoenix Force, which is one of the most powerful forces in the entire universe. So yeah, better recruit her now. When Endgame skipped ahead 5 years, one of the major differences was when Scott Lang suddenly came back, he found his daughter was now 5 years older. That's tough for any parent, but good news for us, since it means Cassie Lang is now one step closer to becoming the superhero known as Stature. Like her father, she eventually uses Pym particles to become a hero that can both shrink and grow, so she can easily fill Ant-Man's shoes whenever Paul Rudd gets too old to play the part. But who am I kidding? Paul Rudd is ageless. Kate Bishop is getting the spotlight incredibly soon thanks to the Hawkeye TV show, and with all signs pointing to this being Hawkeye's swan song, does this mean that Kate will step up and take over the Hawkeye mantle? Hopefully. And while the Avengers always need someone like a Hawkeye to keep them grounded, perhaps Kate Bishop's Hawkeye would be better suited for the Young Avengers alongside heroes like Miss Marvel and Stature. Now the question is Kate Bishop capable of leading the Young Avengers, or should she be a supporting character like Hawkeye was on the OG Avenger team? As I mentioned before, Thor is off doing his own space adventures for a bit, so that leaves the Earth Avengers without a true powerhouse. Well, that's where a Greek god like Hercules could come into play. Hercules actually has a long history in the MCU, and while the franchise hasn't introduced the other Greek gods, I think Hercules would be a solid first choice. Mainly because having Hercules on the Avengers team would hopefully dissuade Disney from making a live-action remake of the Hercules property. I'd rather see Hercules fighting Marvel villains than see that animated film remade into live action, wouldn't you agree?
Come on in.
Will Secret Wars be bigger than Endgame? That seems impossible, but when you look at the Secret Wars storyline and all the active MCU heroes right now, it kinda has to be big, right? The question becomes, how do you fit so many Avengers into Secret Wars and still have it work on a narrative level? Well, that's what I'm going to discuss today. I'll be breaking down what the Avengers roster will actually look like in Secret Wars, and how it can be spaced out to give everyone something to do. Ready to talk Secret Wars? Let's begin.
Observe.
After all that speculation and endless theorizing, Kevin Feige ended his epic return to Comic-Con by announcing that we're getting not one, but 2 Avengers movies in 2025. The first will be Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, and just a few months later, we'll see the Multiverse Saga conclude in Avengers: Secret Wars. Obviously, we've been asking for Secret Wars for a while, and for good reason. That 2015 storyline saw the multiverse collapse thanks to all the incursions, and it basically put Earth 616 and Earth 1610 on a collision course with each other, resulting in some classic comic shenanigans where Doctor Doom seized power and rewrote reality itself to make himself a god. And now that raises a lot of questions. Will Kang the Conqueror take over the Doom role in Secret Wars? Will Kang be defeated in the Kang Dynasty only for the results to be Doom being the main villain of Secret Wars? That's actually tough to say. Logically, Kang should be the bad guy for each movie, but then you risk doing the exact same thing as Infinity War and Endgame, right? Like, Infinity War ended with Thanos victorious and our heroes defeated. then a massive cliffhanger. Will the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars work the same way, where Kang wins in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars sees the Avengers trying to fix it? It's a little too early to say for now, but I'm confident in the MCU's ability to deliver the goods. And here's my general theories on the issue. Instead of deciding between Kang and Doctor Doom for the villain of Secret Wars, why not both? Immediately having two main villains causing almost multiversal destruction is not only an upgrade from Infinity War, but it also gives all the characters something to do. Let's have Secret Wars be a special adaptation of both the Secret Wars comic runs. How about instead of the Beyonder, you have Kang the Conqueror doing damage all across the multiverse, and it causes an ultimate collision between worlds, leading to a battle world type of scenario. That way you can have a multiverse hopping mega battle with Kang and a more earthbound battle with Doctor Doom. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it would be able to divide all the Avengers up into different teams and all have them contribute to this massive multiversal finale in some capacity. So the question becomes, just what do the Avengers look like at this stage? Given that it's the end of the Multiverse Saga and it deals with the fate of the whole universe, you have to think every Avenger is going to get involved. I mean, like what? You're telling me although Hawkeye is retired, he's just gonna stay on his farm while the whole universe collapses? I don't think so. And unless the MCU does a clever budget trick by only transporting a few main, still active heroes to a whole new reality to face the threat, I think there's a way to incorporate everyone. That's right, I'm talking about a bigger Infinity War and Endgame that's able to use everyone mostly effectively by pairing them off in different teams. So I think we'll get a lot of Avengers in Secret Wars, but they'll be in groups in order to better divide everyone's time. The entries that I'm about to dive into are divided into 5 categories. It's the A team, the B team, the space team, the young team, and the outliers. Will it be a perfect system? No, but it will allow all the Avengers to do some avenging. Let's start with the A team.
Don't say it. Don't you say it. Left. Come on!
The A team is who I feel are going to be the main boots on the ground. Every hero is basically an Avenger, right? But this is the team that actually holds the Avengers label and distinction. It's like at the end of Age of Ultron, Hawkeye, Iron Man, and Hulk weren't technically on the official team roster anymore to go out and do missions, but come on, they were still Avengers. So who makes up this A team? I think this will be the group Captain America leads. This movie will come out after Captain America New World Order, and I think that movie will further establish Sam Wilson as the go-to face of Earth's mightiest heroes. He's the anchor and the one capable of giving orders and delegating tasks to others. The rest of the A-team would be made up of the new Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Professor Hulk, and Shang-Chi. See, once you hear all those names, don't you agree Captain America would lead them? Black Panther would be busy with Wakanda stuff to be the official captain. Doctor Strange likes to do his own thing. Ant-Man, the Wasp, and Professor Hulk are key supporting players, and Shang-Chi is still relatively new. I think this team has a good balance of strength, skills, and smarts. Everyone's powers are a bit different, so there's no overlap, and the team dynamic would be fantastic. Maybe I'm just saying that because Scott Lang is on this team, and I think any Scott Lang dynamic in the MCU is amazing.
No, I didn't steal anything. I was returning something I stole.
But you could have the science-based heroes with Professor Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp having good discussions with the more magic-based heroes like Doctor Strange and Shang-Chi, while the two most brawler type of fighters in Captain America and Black Panther try to maintain a sense of order. If I'm structuring this in a similar way as Infinity War, I see this group as the ones having a direct confrontation on Battleworld with Doctor Doom and all the Doombots. They're the ones charging the castle, fighting the evil armies, and holding the line to make sure everything doesn't descend into chaos. Their goal is to get whoever's in charge of Battleworld in order to stop them once and for all, and it will take all the magic, the strength, the science, the shrinking, and the skills they can muster. And hey, they have the secret weapon on the team, right? Ant-Man didn't get to use his super secret move against Thanos, so maybe he could do it here? Alright, next up is the B team. And just because they're the B team, it doesn't make them any less important. This is the team of Avengers who are still doing important work, but are a little more street level. See, here's my only problem with Infinity War and Endgame. I think they're great movies, but they didn't leave much room for the everyday, lower level heroes. Like, people were speculating that Daredevil and the rest of the Defenders would pop up in Infinity War or even in Endgame, and I thought that would be cool, but there was no place for them. It would be jarring if we suddenly cut to Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen with some Thanos alien forces, right? So that's why I envision a different type of mission for this section of heroes. I heard a great point recently that these later Avengers movies have lost the narrative plot point of these guys actually saving civilians. In Infinity War, Tony Stark helps one person up right before Squidward arrives, and then it's all cleared out. Then the battles for all the rest of the movies take place in Wakandan fields, Titan's barren wasteland, and the crater where the Avengers headquarters used to be. Hey, I get it, you need open spaces for these battles, but I miss the Avengers actually helping people in need. So that's where this B team comes in. While the A team is dealing with the main battle world problem, the B team will be helping any normal person who needs saving. So my ideal B team is the aforementioned Daredevil, Spider-Man, Echo, She-Hulk, Wong, and Blade. I think this is the best combination for this. Mostly all these heroes have a deep-rooted desire to save everyday people. Daredevil passionately protects Hell's Kitchen. Spider-Man has proven to be one of the only heroes to go out of his way to save everyone, even the bad guys. She-Hulk is a lawyer defending people's rights, etc. That drive will give a great basis for a team dedicated to helping everyone. And then the other heroes can grow a lot from the experience. Echo will have had her own show by then and will be going through her transition from bad guy to hero. Blade, who has probably spent most of his time operating from the shadows, will have to step out into the light in order to be a hero and help people. And Wong? Well, Wong can fit anywhere where Doctor Strange is not. I'd much rather him on this team helping people than have another excuse of, I can't be here because I have other things to deal with. What do you think of this squad of heroes? Do you think these movies should include scenes of our heroes protecting people? Or would you rather see Daredevil punch a Doombot? I mean, I guess you can have both. Alright, next team. I call this one the Space Avengers, but maybe I should call them the Multiversal Avengers. I mean, the Guardians of the Multiverse is already taken, I guess. These are the heroes that can handle the massive CGI-heavy epic space battles and not immediately feel out of place. Because think of it this way, I envision Secret Wars as this massive multiversal collapse. Universes smash into each other, creating a bright and colorful explosion of realities folding in on itself as Kang's conquering causes unforeseen levels of destruction and chaos. You think Captain America fits in that, or Daredevil? No, they have their place on the ground. And this is why I was saying at the beginning that maybe we should have two big villains, Kang and Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom can be on Battle World, and Kang can be up in the stars and in other realities that our Space Avengers can deal with. So let's run down this roster of who can handle this monumental task of fighting Kang throughout the multiverse. The cornerstone of this team will be a happy, long-awaited reunion. Thor and Loki will be reunited at last. Loki is proving to be the leading Kang expert, and Thor needs to be a big part of any Avengers team. Them together again on the same side against Kang would be the type of conclusion fans want to see. Plus, how great would it be if Loki's arc ends with him on the Avengers? That'd be great. But besides those two, who else? Well, obviously you need Captain Marvel, and she's arguably stronger than Thor. Not only would she be an excellent powerhouse, but also her interaction with Thor would be delightful.
I like this one.
After her, you'd have the Eternals. Although their movie wasn't the most well-received out of Phase 4, they still were positioned to be very important in the cosmic scheme of things. If you can't get all the Eternals, then at least put Cersei and Thena on this team. And then with them, you can have a Guardian of the Galaxy or two.
We're the Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's been highly touted that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be the end of this iteration of the Guardians, and most of them might retire or ride off in their happily ever after. But I think you could squeeze Rocket and Groot on the team because it's easier to pay Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel for voice work.
I'm Groot.
And then if Adam Warlock proves to be as important to the universe as he should have been in the Infinity Saga, maybe he can join them too. And then to top it all off, I'm throwing Nick Fury in this group as an outlier. Why not? Let's get crazy. He might not survive, but there's something fitting about him being the only normal human in this group fighting to save the multiverse. The MCU has been doing an interesting thing in Phase 4 by introducing a lot of young Avengers who will presumably be a big part of this franchise going forward. And I think Secret Wars will give them an amazing opportunity to band together and take on a big threat. What would that threat be, you might ask? Well, it would be alternate versions of the big heroes. That's one aspect I haven't really touched on in this video. Secret Wars is about the collapse of the multiverse and universes on a collision course with each other. It stands to reason that we'll see alternate versions of our favorite heroes. And if the franchise wanted to put the young Avengers in an interesting situation, they would make it so these alternate versions are evil and the young Avengers have to stop them. More on this plot in a second, but let's run through some of the names we could see. Ironheart, Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, Cassie Lang, and America Chavez would all be a given, and you could maybe throw in Patriot as well if you wanted. All of these heroes either have or will have a prominent part of the MCU, and if it doesn't end with all of them uniting, then I would consider that a missed opportunity. There's just such a fresh perspective to be had from younger heroes working together to overcome massive odds, and it's something I think would benefit Secret Wars. I also think they need at least one adult with them, and my pick for that is Hawkeye. He's already proven to be a great mentor to one of these young Avengers, and he's not overpowered enough where he would overshine one of these young Avengers. So who would be the best villains for this group to face on Battleworld? Would it be too on the nose if the young Avengers fought evil counterparts of themselves? So Ironheart would face an evil superior Iron Man, Kate Bishop would face an evil Hawkeye, Miss Marvel would face an evil Captain Marvel, Cassie Lang an evil Ant-Man, America Chavez, I don't know, an evil Doctor Strange, and Eli Bradley would fight an evil Captain America, and then Hawkeye could fight an evil Black Widow, because why not? Yeah, that's extremely obvious, but I don't think it's that weird if you have it so whoever is making this battle world is specifically pitting people against each other based on their fears and desires. If it's Kang or Doom, they could be sadistic enough to make these young Avengers fight evil versions of their adult heroes. So you've made it to the final entry, and you might have noticed I have some gaps. Some heroes are unaccounted for, and that just goes to show how freaking big the MCU is now. So let's see where some other groups can fit in. Obviously, the big one I've left out is the Fantastic Four. They're kind of important. Clearly, with Phase 6 starting with them, they're being positioned to be the center of this big multiverse saga. And let's not forget, Reed Richards will probably be somehow distantly related to Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang the Conqueror. That connects the two of them in an important way that I feel like this saga will highlight. So the question becomes, what are the Fantastic Four going to do in Secret Wars while all my teams I've talked about are doing their own thing? Well, I do have a suggestion for that. While the Earthbound Avengers fight on the ground and the Space Avengers fight through the multiverse, maybe the Fantastic Four can fight through time. Again, I think that connection between Kang and Reed should be utilized, and maybe their journey could be a trippy time travel adventure as Reed and his family chase a version of Kang throughout the timeline to try to stop him. Because you know what this movie needs? More time travel. That's a very easy thing to write about, right? Anyways, another outlier that I haven't talked about are the X-Men. You know, if it wasn't for Miss Marvel, I would have said that maybe the end of Secret Wars would result in the birth of mutants in the MCU, and that would be a way to make them a focal point of Phase 7 in order to give everyone else a breather as the franchise resets itself. Honestly, I thought that was a great idea. But then Miss Marvel had to go and do the whole X-Men theme song while saying she had a mutation, and my whole idea went out the window. Oh well. This confirms that mutants are on our Earth, so they have to be involved in some capacity, right? And then, of course, you have the Thunderbolt to close out Phase 5, which hints that they'll probably deal with some type of multiverse issue, but that team could consist of Yelena, Winter Soldier, US Agent, Baron Zemo, Taskmaster, etc. And as they're positioned as more anti-heroes, I wonder how they'd fit into Secret Wars. Just goes to show there's a lot of moving parts right now. I'm not saying this is the best way, and I certainly understand that there are major flaws in my outline, but I just like the idea of finding ways for all the Avengers to be involved. What do you think?
Since Endgame, the future of the Avengers is uncertain. With Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Black Panther gone, Hawkeye becoming Ronin, and Wanda losing her grip on reality, the future of the team has never been so jeopardized. But not to worry. Some of our favorite heroes might not come back to the MCU, but a new team is on the horizon. Enter the Young Avengers. In today's MCU video, I will go over 10 Young Avengers that will join the battle against future villains and change the MCU from within.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Today's first hero has already been introduced in WandaVision under his civilian name, Billy. Wiccan must be one of the most iconic members of the Young Avengers. His powers are similar to the Scarlet Witch, which makes him one of the most powerful characters in the franchise. He can warp reality, use electrokinesis, teleport himself, fly, and own all sorts of powers linked to magic. Since he's one of the reasons Wanda got back to her senses and was saved in the comics, chances are he will probably play a huge part in the upcoming phases of the MCU. As we've seen in that wacky Halloween special, like his Uncle Quicksilver, Speed can run really fast. But he can also use molecular acceleration, which could explain how he grew so fast in WandaVision. While his brother can cause real damage and alter reality, Speed would be perfect for an undercover mission. Using molecular destabilization, he can literally walk through walls. With his accelerated perception, he can also process information at a way higher speed than anyone else, making him see life in slow motion. Now, this Vision is not the Vision we've all grown to love. Also named Jonas, this Vision has been created by Iron Lad so he could access Vision's knowledge. While it might take a while before we have the chance of seeing him on screen, being an important member of the Young Avengers, he'll certainly show up eventually. Jonas has similar powers to his original self. He can shapeshift, fly, and manipulate energy. But since he is the creation of the time traveler Iron Lad, he can also open wormholes and travel into the time stream. Which could mean that he might show up in Doctor Strange 3 sometime after the introduction of Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, since he is the creation of Kang himself. Now, talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Cassie Lang, aka Stature, has already appeared a few times throughout the MCU. Played by actress Katherine Newton, Cassie has already been confirmed as being part of Quantumania. Just like her father, Stature can reduce her size or become a giant. The only difference is that she doesn't use any fancy gadgets to do so. She basically exposed herself intentionally to Pym particles, which made her abilities built into herself. Someone's been playing with Daddy's toys as he was stuck in the quantum realm, it seems. As the founder of the Young Avengers, Iron Lad is sure to show up in one film or series. Like I explained before, he is the one responsible for the new and improved Vision, but he also holds a very dark secret. In the future, he is destined to become Kang the Conqueror. When he met his future self through time traveling, he was so horrified about what he would become that his main mission became to pinpoint moments that would turn him dark and choose another path. He doesn't really have any powers per se, but uses equipment similar to Iron Man's if you add casual time travel to the mix. The Ironheart series was confirmed by Disney a few months ago and will feature Riri Williams as she builds her own iron armor. In the comics, she reverse engineers an old Iron Man model before creating her very own prototype and becoming Ironheart. While the plot of the series has not been revealed yet, Riri might be an intern at Stark Industries and borrow a part or two, or full armor to do some tests. With super genius intelligence level, she is the perfect candidate to continue Iron Man's legacy and continuously improve upon the iron armors. Compared to Iron Lad, who is a younger, time-traveling Kang, Kid Loki is literally the god of mischief reborn. After causing some trouble like he usually does, Loki died, but his death was not made permanent as it should have. Sometime before the comic book event called The Siege of Asgard, Loki found a way to manipulate Hela so she would take his name out of the Book of Hell, allowing him to be reborn. So far, the plot of Loki remains speculation and wild theories, but taking into account that the character eventually joins the Young Avengers, it could be one wild twist to add to an already complex character. Chances are the upcoming series' Secret Invasion will introduce the character of Hulkling. Having nothing to do with Bruce Banner's Hulk besides the fact that he's big and green, Hulkling is half Kree, half Skrull. Although he has superhuman strength and durability like Hulk, he can also shapeshift and often uses the skill to give himself wings. Hulkling's shared heritage would make for the perfect opportunity to expand on the Skrull-Kree war while making things a bit more complex. Kate Bishop doesn't have any superhuman powers, but boy can she aim. In the upcoming series Hawkeye, she will take Clint Barton's place as the arrow-shooting Avenger. After being kidnapped by the villain El Matador, Kate was saved by Clint, which inspired her to pursue crime fighting. Since Jeremy Renner has been confirmed for Disney Plus's Hawkeye, and he went full Ronin during the events of Endgame, something tells me that we'll get a sort of Karate Kid series, but with Clint teaching Kate to shoot arrows instead of breaking ice blocks. Miss America will make her grand entrance as America Chavez in the upcoming film Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Played by actress Xochitl Gomez, Miss America lives in the utopian Parallel, a dimension which exists out of time and space. There, she absorbed the powers of the Demiurge, the embodiment of the life force itself. Since Miss America has the ability to travel throughout the multiverse, she is sure to play a huge role in the next Doctor Strange or even set things into motion. Gifted with flight, superhuman speed, and strength, the queer character is sure to shake the MCU to its core and bring it to infinity and beyond.
The MCU just keeps growing, and we've gotten some amazing new characters in recent years, but there are still some big ones missing. Characters like Ghost Rider, Sentry, and Miles Morales, among many others, all seem to be waiting in the wings, just itching for their chance to shine. But when will these heroes actually show up, and how could they fit into the MCU as we know it today? Well, that's what I'm here to discuss. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started right now. We're slowly getting to the point where every Marvel character who showed up in a non-MCU movie has made their transition over to the MCU, but there is still one notable exception. Nick Cage starred as Ghost Rider for 2 movies, and while no one would say those 2 films are their favorite superhero films ever, Ghost Rider is still an extremely popular character that fans really want to see in the MCU. And yes, I completely understand that the MCU did technically have Ghost Rider in the MCU in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, but I think the MCU will continue to ignore everything that happened in that show and just say it took place in a different universe somewhere. I know, it's a shame, and Robbie Reyes deserved more of a spotlight, but that now allows the MCU to focus on Johnny Blaze. What's interesting is that when the She-Hulk trailer came out, fans were quick to notice a Johnny Blaze poster in the background, so it could be that the MCU is setting the stage for Ghost Rider to come riding in, flaming skull and all. I think the reason we haven't been able to have Ghost Rider in the MCU so far is because the tone just didn't work. Having a hero out there that could just stare into your eyes and inflict untold amounts of pain to you if you've sinned didn't quite work with the whole Earth's Mightiest Heroes vibe. But now it's grown to be okay. With Doctor Strange taking things in a slightly darker territory and heroes like Blade and Moon Knight running around, Ghost Rider can fit right in. The question becomes, where would he go? I think they should do a Midnight Suns type of situation and team up all these slightly darker characters. Seeing Ghost Rider on a team at first before spinning him off into his own series, I think would be a good way to differentiate him from what came before. When Kevin Feige announced Phase 5 and parts of Phase 6 at Comic-Con, it gave us a clearer picture of what everything was building toward. I know we're all stoked for both Kang and potentially Doctor Doom to kick butt in the upcoming Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars Avengers films, but now it's become even clearer that the other big cosmic baddie Galactus is going to be waiting for a while to cause chaos. And no Galactus probably means no Silver Surfer, which is the real bummer. I think Galactus is cool and all, but I think it's time for people to get to know how amazing Silver Surfer is as a character. He's definitely a fan favorite and has way more layers to him than just a guy riding around on a cosmic surfboard. So if we're not doing Galactus for another few years, could you work Silver Surfer into the story sooner? I was kind of hoping we'd see Silver Surfer in Thor: Love and Thunder to help set up the cosmic side of the MCU more, but that didn't happen. Probably for the best now, in my opinion. We do know the Eternals are traveling to confront the Celestials, and and try to save Earth from being judged. Maybe that inevitable sequel would be the best launching point for the hero that was once known as Norrin Radd. Speaking of his real name, another alternative is to introduce him pre-Silver Surfer. Maybe we can visit his homeworld in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or something, so we know that he's there and what fate eventually awaits for him. Sticking cosmic for a second, let's talk about Nova. The character has a major Green Lantern vibe to him as a normal human who encounters a dying alien, and that alien grants him amazing abilities to join the Nova Corps, which was an intergalactic space corps. Yeah, it's a little derivative, but Richard Rider is an interesting enough character where I think that's okay, and the MCU has a great setup in place to introduce him. In the comics, Xandar is destroyed, which is what sort of leads to Richard getting his Nova powers. And then through his abilities, he's able to restore Xandar and help with repopulation. So overall, the setup needs to be that Xandar is in trouble, and that's where we're at now in the MCU. Although we didn't see it, we know Thanos completely decimated the Nova Corps as he steals the Power Stone. And then it's not mentioned, but imagine that small number that survived had to turn around and turn to dust after Thanos wiped out half the universe. All that tragedy means the Nova Corps might be looking to rebuild, and that's where Richard Rider comes into play. If we're talking movies, then the best place for him would probably be the Marvels movie. Captain Marvel is super space-bound, but while she's trapped either switching bodies with Miss Marvel or some other Earth shenanigan, it would be cool for her to leave Nova in charge of the space side while she figures out what's going on Earth. What if the Sentry had already been a part of the MCU, but no one remembers it? Like, what if the original Avengers had 7 members and Tony Stark wasn't alone with Nebula in Infinity War? What if Sentry had been there the whole time, but it was wiped from everyone's brains? Okay, I know that's too wild of a stretch, but it's an aspect of the Sentry character I find fascinating. He was truly one of Earth's most beloved and strongest heroes, but when he was around, his darker alter ego, the Void, was also around, which was just as strong as him but evil, so it created a huge conundrum. Are you being a responsible hero if even though you're the best hero on the planet, you're also responsible for its biggest problem? That's something I always want to see in live action. In the comics, there was an arc where Doctor Strange and others made the world forget about him, but we can't do that anymore since that's just a No Way Home ripoff. Maybe what would be cool is if the upcoming Fantastic Four movie actually does take place in the 60s like some people want, and we find that the Sentry is an active superhero in that time, but has to do the memory wipe thing. So whenever the Fantastic Four are transported to modern day, they could seek out the Sentry and awaken him from his unassuming life. It could be fun, right? Plus, it's been said that the Sentry has the power of 1 million exploding suns. How cool is that? Alright, this one is kind of a cheat since I'm talking about all the X-Men instead of an individual, but come on, there are so many of those guys. This whole list could have been X-Men we're excited to see and not just Marvel heroes. But that does beg the question, which mutant hero are you most excited to see in the MCU? The safe bet is the new Wolverine, but I would say updated versions of Professor X, Cyclops, and Jean Grey would be a lot of fun to see as well. Now, just to imagine where they would fit next in the MCU. You know, it would have been really perfect if the mutants just existed in another universe, which would have raised the stakes of the upcoming Multiverse Saga, but then Miss Marvel seemed to suggest that mutants will be popping up on our Earth very soon. Not what I wanted, but at least we're on the right track about seeing our favorite mutants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Where would someone like Wolverine fit the best? Honestly, given his whole vibe, maybe it would be the Blade movie. Blade could be hunting something he thinks is a vampire, but then it turns out to just be a Wolverine living an isolated life away from everyone. The future of Miles Morales in the MCU is a little difficult to predict. They teased that he at least is part of the universe thanks to Spider-Man Homecoming, but then the following year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was released. That is arguably one of the best Spider-Man films ever, which threw his inclusion in the MCU into doubt. Then No Way Home seemed to tease that there was a black Spider-Man out there, which many took as a Miles Morales tease, and now here we are, waiting for Miles to show up. As much as I want to see Miles Morales Morales soon and have him play a part in all these upcoming Avengers movies, I think the wiser choice would be to wait. Right now, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is still about 17 years old in the MCU. I would say let's have another trilogy of Spider-Man movies, so Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6, where 4 is the street-level aspect paired with the black Spider-Man suit, possibly paired with Daredevil. Spider-Man 5 would tease Miles Morales and perhaps even introduce him at the very end, and then Spider-Man 6 could be Tom Holland's Peter training a teenage Miles Morales. That would allow Tom Holland to age up a bit in order to take on a mentor role, because as of now, having a 15-year-old Miles with a 17-year-old Peter just feels a little weird, right? And hey, if you're suffering from serious Miles Morales withdrawals, then you have the animated Spider-Verse movies. So I think it all works out. So it's not uncommon for companies like Marvel and DC to create characters that are clear parallels to established heroes. With that in mind, let me mention Hyperion. Hyperion is Marvel's Superman and possesses much of the same powers. He was the only survivor of a race of Eternals that lived on a dying world, and he was sent to Earth as a baby where he would learn all the values of society and go on to be one of the world's greatest heroes. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if the MCU gets a Hyperion project off the ground and into movies before DC can decide what the heck to do with their Superman character. There was a rumor that Henry Cavill would play Hyperion in Loki 2, which is complete nonsense and doesn't make a lick of sense, but the idea that Loki could encounter bizarro versions of the Justice League and see what it's like to meet a literal Superman would be pretty cool. The MCU already showcased a different version of Superman, with Icarus having much the same powers, but he's sitting on the surface of the sun at the moment melting, which means someone has to step up. Why couldn't it be Hyperion? Simon Williams is Wonder Man, and his backstory is fun enough where I think he needs to play a prominent part in the MCU. So Simon originally got caught embezzling from his company, expressed an interest in hating Tony Stark, and then the Masters of Evil noticed this and recruited him for their little club. Baron Zemo hit him with some comic book mumbo-jumbo science blast and gave him superpowers. Then after, he was sent to infiltrate the Avengers and lead them into a trap. Wonder Man realized he wasn't really a bad guy and then started to help the Avengers. I don't think we've seen a full-on villain who becomes a good guy in the MCU, right? Sure, there's Bucky, but he was brainwashed, so that doesn't count. Maybe Echo, depending on her upcoming series, but it doesn't really matter. Wonder Man deserves a spot to shine. Honestly, I wish he showed up in She-Hulk. His case of starting off evil but then growing a conscience would have been an interesting trial scene. Other than that, maybe he'll show up in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? You see, Wonder Man was actually in Guardians Volume 2, played by Nathan Fillion, but all those scenes were cut from the film. Now, one of the reasons they were cut could be that the MCU has plans for Simon Williams down the line and didn't want to ruin his appearance with just a joke. I've always been open with how I'm not a fan of how they treated the Hulk in the MCU, and while She-Hulk does offer an interesting new side for the character, I do wish we could see Amadeus Cho sooner rather than later. Amadeus is one of the smartest minds on the planet. He has a special skill of problem solving that allows him to think about specific scenarios and know how everything is going to play out. He brings a new element to the Hulk character that before we didn't get to see, and as Mark Ruffalo gets a little tired of all the dots on his face from motion capture, we could introduce a potentially smarter Amadeus Cho. So if I were running things, I'd make season 1 of She-Hulk end with a tease for season 2 that promises Amadeus in the mix. 1 Hulk is easy, 2 Hulks are an inconvenience. 3 Hulks just sounds fascinating, doesn't it? But yeah, given that he's super smart and super strong, makes him invaluable. If there's one cosmic Thor character that people want to see show up in the MCU, it's Beta Ray Bill. The Corbinite is a fan favorite character, and given that the MCU has changed things where Stormbreaker is a Thor weapon now that was used to kill Thanos, it makes you wonder how the MCU would incorporate the character right now. Most logically, he'd show up in the inevitable Thor 5 and join Thor on his adventures. But if I had a time machine, I would have changed things to replace Korg with Beta Ray Bill instead. We saw Beta Beta Ray Bill as one of the champion Stoneheads in Ragnarok, so wouldn't it have made more sense if it was Bill who met Thor instead of Korg? Yeah, Korg was really funny in Ragnarok, but I personally thought it was too much Korg in Love and Thunder. If this was Beta Ray Bill instead, then we could have had Ragnarok be his introduction, and then gotten a more fleshed out version in Love and Thunder, which would have been awesome to see. I mean, however they bring in Beta Ray Bill will be fine with me, but now I can't help but despise Korg a little bit more since I really think this idea could have worked wonderfully. There's an alternate universe out there where that axed New Warriors TV pilot was a huge success and Squirrel Girl was officially part of the MCU. Squirrel Girl has a big squirrel tail and has enhanced strength, speed, agility, and reflexes, along with some squirrel claws. Yeah, it sounds silly at first, but it's no different than the name Spider-Man, right? Anyways, Squirrel Girl is a really fun hero that deserves a place in the MCU. She's probably not movie material yet, but TV seems perfect for her. Logically, her humor falls in line with the She-Hulk TV show, so that would be the best bet of where she could show up. But how about a curveball and have Squirrel Girl show up in Daredevil's TV show? The Man Without Fear has 18 episodes to fill. Why not use fun characters like this? Hulkling is another hero whose story deserves to be told for how epic it is. Hulkling is the son of a Kree and Skrull, which makes him insanely important in the cosmic war that has always been brewing between these two races. He's inherited abilities from both parents, which means he can shapeshift like the Skrull, but also has all the abilities like flight, super speed, and strength of his Kree side. It's truly the best of both worlds. As the Kree and Skrull war are set to do battle and secret invasion probably, that would be the perfect time to introduce a young Hulkling so that he could join the Young Avengers down the line. Because Disney likes to reuse plots that work, maybe they'll have Nick Fury tasked with protecting a young Hulkling just for funsies. The MCU is slowly starting to incorporate Nexus beings as it begins its multiversal war, which means it should probably bring in the Nexus of all realities, right? And you know who protects that? That's right, Man-Thing. Man-Thing might look a little freaky, but his heart is in the right place. At least, I think it is. Dr. Ted Sallis was working on another super soldier serum, injected it within himself, then accidentally crashed his car into a magical swamp, and that eventually turned him into Man-Thing. I'm just saying, since Nexus beings are going to be important, it feels like Kang would attack the Nexus of all realities, wouldn't he? That makes Man-Thing an incredibly important hero in the grand scheme of things. Plus, I just think Man-Thing is neat. More Man-Thing, please.
Avengers, congregate! No, that's not right. I'll keep thinking.
Stop the car!
Earth's mightiest heroes are seemingly expanding their roster with every new project. Some retire or move on to that big Malibu mansion in the sky, but their legacy lives on. In this video, we will be exploring the Marvel heroes confirmed to be taking a spot on the Avengers lineup, as well as checking out some we hope get the official call to the big leagues.
Surprise!
This includes only the main Avengers team and no others, no matter how dark, young, West Coast, or fantastic they may be.
Oh, mixed it.
Which heroes are you excited to see return, join, and possibly lead? Let's find out right now. The Master of the Mystic Arts may prove to be the most valuable of the Avengers lineup in their coming fights. It already seems like Stephen Strange has somewhat taken over the role from Tony Stark as the centerpiece of this phase of the MCU. He's already had quite an impact on Spider-Man, and we know that very soon he'll have his hands full with all sorts of multiversal threats.
I need your help.
With threats like Kang the Conqueror on their way, having Doctor Strange on or even leading the team will be more important than ever, even if he winds up being the cause of some of these threats in the first place. Wanda Maximoff definitely has a lot to answer for.
I made mistakes.
But based on the Doctor Strange trailer, it seems like she might be getting a get-out-of-jail-free card based on the multiverse exploding. That being said, the Scarlet Witch has grown into possibly the most powerful being in the universe. She has already shown her strength against people like Thanos and Agatha Harkness, and has only gotten stronger since. She joined the Avengers way back at the end of Age of Ultron, and will likely be returning as their powerhouse. That is, of course, unless she goes crazy, traps the Avengers in a geometrically impossible hex, and forces their kids to play soccer with her kids again.
Somebody better be bleeding, broken, or on fire.
Believe it or not, I think this next one is more someone we hope we see on the lineup as opposed to someone who's confirmed.
Yeah.
Though he was officially made an Avenger in Infinity War.
Yeah, a couple times.
Conveniently, no one really remembers that. The one guy that was there is responsible for erasing Peter Parker from everyone's memory. It is unclear what is going to happen with Spider-Man now.
Yeah, me too.
He may keep to himself and stay out of the way of Avengers-level threats, and now that everyone has forgotten him, he has absolutely no connections to the real world beyond his Spider-Man moniker. He may fight with the Avengers, but the fact of the matter is, no one has any idea who he is anymore. Bruce Banner's status may be a little in question. The guy can't decide if he's green and huge or small and nerdy. His arm is still injured, but last we saw him in Shang-Chi, he was back to his normal Bruce self.
I don't have her number.
We also know that once he begins mentoring his cousin Jennifer Walters, he will be getting a greenish hue again. All in all, it's safe to say that Bruce will again fight alongside the Avengers. However, there is a slight chance, based on recent rumors, that he may actually be fighting on the opposite side. I would love to see a World War Hulk-style villainous turn from one of our favorite scientists. But given that he is one of the original members still remaining, it's likely the Avengers would be incomplete without the Hulk. Shang-Chi just became one of the most powerful additions to the Avengers roster, now that he has the mystical 10 rings under his control. Also, Katie is there as well.
Yes.
And she basically learned to shoot like Hawkeye in less than a day, so color me impressed. While it's not totally known where the next Avengers level threat is coming from, current members of the Avengers seem to have a vested interest in the weapons that allowed Shang-Chi's father to rule for so many years. Once they take a break from their karaoke, I believe they both will be great assets to the Avengers roster. Adam Warlock is already confirmed to appear in the next Guardians installment. However, there is really no confirmation as to where and if he will appear afterwards.
We're all very fascinated, Wayne.
For all we know, he could be a one-off character who perishes at the end of the film. So while Adam's future is uncertain, I think it is very likely we see him join the universe's greatest team of heroes, the Avengers. He has a long comic history with them, especially in stories like Infinity War, that have already played out, which means he has some time to make up. His connections to galactic and celestial beings could make the cinematic universe even larger than it already is. While the Guardians of the Galaxy are definitely their own super team, they already have a history of joining up with the Avengers when the time comes.
I'm all yours.
This is especially true since two of their members, Rocket and Nebula, likely exchanged phone numbers with the Avengers' main players during their 5-year dystopian time together. They may currently be on their own mission of trying to find a lost past version of Gamora, but once they do that, I imagine we will see them helping out Earth's mightiest heroes once again. Though if I was a betting man, I would say that not all of them make it out alive in their next movie. Drax. Is it even the Avengers without Captain America? No matter who is carrying the shield? Now that Sam Wilson is coming into his own as the new Captain America, he will likely take his rightful spot as at least if not the leader of Earth's greatest superhero team.
Captain America.
He recently formed a great friendship with Bucky, and became the symbol that Steve knew he could be. Therefore, it is safe to say that the military veteran and all-around American hero will be stepping up to fight the good fight for as long as he can. He could probably even do it all day.
It's always that last line.
Mark Spector will be appearing in his very own Disney Plus show very soon. With the arrival of Moon Knight, the MCU is getting much weirder.
Face the vengeance of the Moon Knight.
Moon Knight is a character who could add a very interesting dynamic to the Avengers roster. We don't yet know where he will be at the end of his show, and honestly, he strikes me as more of a lone wolf type of guy. At least one of his personalities does. I, however, would be delighted to see a dark and mysterious character like Moon Knight join the Avengers team, if only to freak out people like Rhodey and Bucky. The caped vigilante would be an excellent addition to the Avengers roster, and all his alternate personalities would be as well. Both Scott Lang and Janet Van Dyne are set to have more adventures in the MCU, and I don't see them not joining up with the Avengers when the time comes. Especially since they seem like they may be the first ones to come into contact with Kang the Conqueror, the next big Avengers threat.
The rebels and the Avengers together.
The Ant-Man team is on the forefront of scientific discoveries relating to the quantum realm, meaning they may be the first to discover a multitude of threats that no one previously knew existed. Regardless, we have already seen from Hawkeye that they are sharing technology and hero secrets with other past and future members, meaning their spot is pretty solidified. How could the God of Thunder not eventually be returning to the Avengers team? He's one of the original 6 still going. In his coming film as well, we may see Thor grow to the strongest he has ever been. And this is a guy who already took out Thanos. He will definitely be dealing with the fallout that Endgame had on the cosmos. He has given up his throne to Valkyrie, likely to find his own path, which almost definitely includes a spot on the Avengers roster when the time comes. Last we saw he was traveling with the Guardians, but I can't imagine that lasts long, based on his and Star-Lord's lack of a bromance. Name one other character in the MCU who has had more of a roller coaster ride than our lovable god of mischief, Loki.
This is madness.
He has been a villain, anti-hero, a troublesome kid, a loving and hating brother and son. He has also been to locations in the MCU that no other character has ever ventured to. Last we saw him, he had fallen in love with a variant of himself named Sylvie, who just so happens to stab the one man in the heart who was holding back several evils of the multiverse. He then returned to a time variance authority he thought he recognized, but turned out to be something else entirely. Loki right now has the greatest knowledge of the multiverse and is rumored to be appearing in the Multiverse of Madness to aid Doctor Strange.
Things just got out of hand.
I think the best place for Loki to go now after his long journey is to become a full-fledged hero, and fight side by side with his brother as an Avenger, and not someone who is unleashing an alien army on them.
But we're supposed to die.
Carol Danvers has been set up to be one of the universe's oldest and greatest heroes. She will likely be leading most galactic charges, especially with storylines involving Skrulls and Celestials that have been set up. Not only will Captain Marvel be rejoining the team, but she could be bringing some other Marvels with her. I believe Kamala Khan will make a better young Avenger, but I see no reason why Monica Rambeau's version of Captain Marvel, aka Photon, couldn't join the Avengers team right alongside Carol. This is of course right after whatever beef there is between the two captains is squashed. Oh snap, we've got the Sorcerer Supreme in the house. Wong slightly shocked everyone in an underrated moment of No Way Home when it was revealed that since the passing of the Ancient One, Wong had taken over the role of Sorcerer Supreme. I like to call him the Nick Fury of Phase 4, since he seems to be popping up in everything, including Shang-Chi and Spider-Man. He is already working closely with people like Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers, so I think the Avengers can rest easy knowing the Sorcerer Supreme Wong will be on their side. Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, is already confirmed to be appearing in her very own Disney Plus show. However, like a few others, we simply do not know where her arc will leave her at the end of her first Marvel project. The best case scenario is that her cousin Bruce helps her master her power, and she becomes not only a member but also the legal representative of the Avengers. It's not quite clear that she will be a character willing to join a team with such a history as the Avengers, but hey, we can all cross our fingers and hope and dream. Vision. What a complex android. We've seen his life end on multiple occasions at this point, and yet he is still kicking around. The last time we saw what I think we can safely call the main Vision, albeit a lot whiter than he used to be, he had just had his memories restored and flew off to who knows what. I imagine after some brief soul searching and learning how to live without the Mind Stone embedded in his forehead, Vision will find his way back to logically fight on the side of good once again. The Eternals are a super team all their own, and I think some of them could make the leap to join Earth's mightiest heroes. Before his demise, Icarus spoke about wanting to be the next leader of the super team. We may have lost some along the way, but Eternals like Cersei, Thena, Kingo, and now Star Fox are all out on missions of their own. Once they complete those missions, however, and find the Eternals they are looking for, some of them may choose to return to the planet they call home, and risk so much to save. There was a time where I really thought this was an impossibility, but with the release of No Way Home, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock has made his absolutely official MCU debut.
Take your shot.
Kevin Feige has even revealed that he will be the official Daredevil of their cinematic universe. We are still a little unsure how canon the Netflix show will be, but depending, we could have a Daredevil that is no stranger to albeit subpar super teams. I believe Daredevil is a character who can easily make the transition from a street-level hero all the way to an Avenger. Bucky has been on quite a journey and has hopefully left his Winter Soldier persona behind. That being said, he is still chock full of Super Soldier Serum, which makes him an absolute asset to Earth's mightiest heroes. He has basically been an official Avenger since the Battle of Wakanda in Avengers Infinity War. He helped the new Captain America, and possible leader of the Avengers, come into his own as his friend and ally. He may have had a rocky past, but I think we're at the point where Bucky's future is very heroic. Look, this next one has fought alongside the Avengers, but I would give just about anything for him to get the official knighting treatment just like Spider-Man got.
I'm Korg, this is me.
If our favorite rock alien Korg doesn't get an official spot on the Avengers, I will rebel. When we met Korg, he was a Cronin gladiator fighting for freedom,
Wooden fork.
albeit in a hilarious way on the planet of Sakaar. He then kept Thor company during the blip in New Asgard, and showed up when called upon to help fight the forces of Thanos. Korg is often a comedic relief side character, which, don't get me wrong, I want him to continue being because it's pure gold.
Oh, mixed it.
Okoye was definitely the official Wakandan representative on the Avengers team during the blip, and is therefore no stranger to working with the likes of space raccoons and war machines. She proved to be an extremely valuable asset as one of the most advanced society's greatest warriors.
You are not fit to be a king!
She will be an extremely important character, contributing to filling the hole that will be left without T'Challa, and her presence on the Avengers makes me extremely optimistic. Flash Thompson at the moment is a bit of a goofball.
Dickwad?
Tony Revolori is a fantastic actor and could give Flash a great character arc, taking him from high school bully to hardened military veteran. This could pave the way for the appearance of Agent Venom. This is especially possible now that No Way Home somehow allowed a piece of the Venom symbiote to enter the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, this would take a jump in time and perhaps Flash dropping out of MIT to join the military and see an unfortunate accident where he loses his legs, allowing him and the Venom symbiote to bond.
Venom away!
James Rhodes is now the oldest Avenger in terms of their first appearance. With Tony gone and Pepper likely only appearing as rescue on brief occasions so that she has time to take care of her daughter, that leaves War Machine as the only person from the original Iron Man still participating in anything remotely close to a battle.
Happy to help.
War Machine is actually set up to take on more of a leadership role on an Avengers team. He is a war veteran and the closest personal friend to the original leader Tony Stark. Going forward, the Avengers will need new leadership, and I think Rhodey has the experience and the drive to become that new leader. With the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, I have to believe that the Black Panther mantle would be passed to an existing character. I have been shouting from the mountaintops that Daniel Kaluuya is more than talented enough to flesh out the character of W'Kabi and give him a redemption arc great enough to become the protector of Wakanda, and possibly even its king, if only for a short while Shuri comes of age. You've just been made the ruler of the remnants of a small nation in Norway that was once the greatest superpower in the galaxy. And you have a pet flying horse. What are you gonna do now?
You're being serious.
Valkyrie has already taken up a spot on the large Avengers roster with her contribution to the Battle of Avengers Endgame. She aided characters like Spider-Man and Captain America and took out entire flying Leviathan beasts by herself. Valkyrie is a natural-born leader, and will likely get the chance to show that now that she has taken over the throne of New Asgard. Robbie Reynolds is a character I have personally been waiting to make their debut on the big screen. Unlike many other characters on this list, he is the only one I have not heard any sort of confirmation that they will make an appearance. The Sentry is a hero with godlike strength and abilities akin to Superman. He was actually a human who was mutated by a serum that gave him this incredible power. Yes, I know that sounds very familiar to a lot of other stories, but hey, the movies could make it their own. The Sentry has been a member of all manner of Marvel teams, including the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse, the Dark Avengers, and of course the Mighty Avengers, meaning his comic background makes him a perfect fit for Earth's mightiest heroes.
The MCU's Multiverse Saga is well underway.
Come on, give me it.
And as the Secret Wars approach, you can be sure that variants and cameos galore are also on the way. With that being said, and in no particular order, here are 15 Marvel heroes from outside of the MCU that could appear in Avengers Secret Wars. Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool have been teasing their inevitable MCU debut for quite some time now. Deadpool 3 will see the Merc with the Mouth tamper with timelines and end up in the MCU somehow, all while being accompanied with the next entry on our list. As confirmed by Hugh Jackman himself, Wolverine is finally on his way to the MCU as well. Not only will Wolverine surely play a pivotal role in Avengers Secret Wars, but he could potentially be the catalyst in founding the X-Men in the MCU.
Oh, and when are we getting the X-Men?
Having already been treated to a Patrick Stewart as Illuminati Professor X in the MCU, surely more X-Men from the original X universe will turn up during Secret Wars as well. Considering the X-Men have already been altering timelines and universes in their movies, it only makes sense they do the same in the MCU. During Spider-Man No Way Home, Tobey Maguire's Raimi-verse Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man both debuted in the MCU and helped Tom Holland's Spider-Man fight a rogues gallery of their villains.
Like, does it just come out of your wrists, or
does it come out of anywhere else?
Of course, with how well that went over with fans, Marvel Studios would be foolish not to revisit the dynamic between the three Peters, and that could happen during Secret Wars. Superhero moviegoers have seen two interpretations of Gwen Stacy on the big screen over the years, one played by Bryce Dallas Howard and Emma Stone respectively. With Gwendolyn's ever-growing popularity and appearances in the animated Spider-Verse films, is it possible that Spider-Gwen will show up during Secret Wars? Tom Hardy's Venom has already debuted in the MCU, setting up the potential for more crossovers in the future. Also, the possibility does exist that Topher Grace's Venom could rear its ugly head once more, but I don't think anybody really wants that. In the craziest of scenarios, perhaps a Flash Thompson variant could debut as Agent Venom in the Secret Wars. Both Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo have portrayed Bruce Banner and the Hulk in the MCU. Could it be possible that the two cross paths in Secret Wars? Although they are intended to be the same Banner, what if that wasn't entirely the case? Eric Bana also played the Hulk in a movie that some people argue is canon to the MCU, so what's to stop him or even, hey, Lou Ferrigno turning up as well? John Bernthal is the perfect Frank Castle and should be rejoining the MCU soon, but before him, Thomas Jane was the Punisher for many people. Ray Stevenson's Punisher Warzone interpretation of Castle could show up, and let's not forget about Dolph Lundgren. Imagine a standoff between those four. Yeah, I'm in. Samuel L. Jackson embodies the character of Nick Fury and was also the inspiration behind his redesigned look in the comics. But before the aesthetic change, Nick Fury looked much different and was played by David Hasselhoff in the 1998 movie Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Hoff versus Samuel L. Jackson? I think I speak for everyone when I say we would like to see that. Although many anticipate Chris Evans returning as Cap during the Secret Wars, I call Cap and say that's too obvious. Instead, imagine a scene where stars of 70s and 90s Captain America movies respectively, Reb Brown and Matt Salinger, share a moment with Evans's old man Steve Rogers as the universe goes to hell. Charlie Cox and his rendition of Daredevil are now fully submerged in the MCU, but before Matt Murdock was smooching with She-Hulk or beating baddies on Netflix, he was played by Ben Affleck in the 2003 film called, well, Daredevil. Do you want to see the return of the Affleck of Hell's Kitchen? We have not seen Mahershala Ali's Blade in the MCU yet, but we have heard his voice. Before the MCU ever existed, Blade was its own established film franchise, starring the iconic Wesley Snipes.
He's a familiar.
With Blade getting his own movie in Phase 5, come Phase 6, and the Secret Wars, we could be dealing with a pair of vampire hunters. Speaking of iconic actors and underworld-oriented superhero film franchises, Nicolas Cage played Johnny Blaze in two non-MCU Ghost Rider films. Gabriel Luna portrayed Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, which also dabbles in multiple universes. I'm willing to bet we see these two hotheads roll up on each other in Secret Wars. Before being spotted in CGI form and voiced by Seth Green in the MCU, Howard the Duck had his own movie in 1986. Using practical effects, superformers Ed Gale and Jordan Prentice brought Howard to life, while actor Chip Zien lended his voice to the role. For those who don't remember, at the end of the Howard the Duck film, he's introduced to a dimensional jumping device. Hey, that's all I'm saying. Marvel's First Family is the last entry on our list. The Fantastic Four have had a few failed cinematic endeavors before the MCU came into fruition. That being said, these heavily criticized movies might also generate one of the most meta moments in Marvel history. In 2005 and 2007, MCU star Chris Evans played the Human Torch. In 2015, MCU star Michael B. Jordan did the same. Could Secret Wars see both Johnny Storms team up against Captain America and Killmonger variants? Oh, make that happen. Please make that happen. And that's our list. Who do you want to see show up in Avengers Secret Wars? Let us know in the comments below, and hey, while you're down there, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and don't forget to enable notifications so you don't miss any crossover comic content. See ya!